All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot nonsense from YouTube. Lots of gems, lots of using Biu Tze on your seniors, and lots of, being dope is a skill. Let's get to it.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
Yo, Dre, how you doing, man?
Sifu, I'm great, Sifu. How are you? You
Good.
just got back.
I just got back from a cruise.
Woo!
It was nice. It was a Disney cruise.
Nice.
So, if you told me 10 years ago I would go on cruises and like them, I would be like, I've become a soulless geezer. But a cruise is pretty amazing. They take care. It's like you go on vacation, and a lot of times you think about going to the beach or you think about going somewhere nice on vacation. You just want to relax and not take care of anything.
Is this your first cruise?
No, it's my second one.
Okay.
And basically, that's what a cruise is. You go there, and you can do whatever you want. You can go to the pool. The Disney one had like water slides, all sorts of crazy stuff. You don't have to worry about anything. The kids have all their activities and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can eat all the food
That's
you
the
want.
fireness.
My
of a
abs
cruise.
definitely melted in that week, but it's okay. I'm back.
Disintegrated.
Yes, it was definitely worth it.
How was it for you with the motion sickness?
No, there's almost... Well, first of all, I don't have that problem because
Okay.
my parents have a boat, and I basically grew up on boats, so that's never been a problem.
Oh,
but the
excuse me.
ship is so big. No, it doesn't move. The ship like that doesn't really sway or move.
All right,
you're,
all right.
Like in really like bad waters, which is usually not the case. But
Where was the cruise?
it went to the
set?
Bahamas, and
Okay.
then because it's Disney. Disney owns their own island in the Caribbean. It's called Castaway Cay. So they have their own island. You go there, you go to the beach. They even have a beach which is just for
lying.
adults, and like you leave your
You're
kids over there. Yeah,
lying.
it's pretty awesome.
This is
It's
adult beach, like an adult beach.
No, like a beach where the kids are not allowed, so the adults
okay.
can just because it's a Disney cruise, so there are
Okay,
a lot of
yeah,
kids.
yeah.
All right,
That's
there are a
what
lot of
made
kids.
it so
I was
huh?
about to make a private island joke and then realized that was probably not a good thing.
Yeah, especially with that accent. All right. Most of your people were going over to that private islands, all right?
It's like a
lot of people
pirate.
with your accent in high places were friends with the private island guy, all right? But we're not talking about that. I don't want to get demonetized. So anyway, this is the Kung Fu Genius podcast.
Yes.
So what you got for me, Dre?
All right. Excuse me, sorry. My voice was like, nah. All right. So, first off, we got Andre Boli.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
What is your opinion on Hong Kong as a destination to visit as a white guy who trains in martial arts?
Uh-huh.
You're a white guy, right?
Yes, I'm an expert at this. Being a white guy who's gone to Hong Kong.
And trains in martial arts.
And trains in martial arts.
What are the best places to go and do in relation to the martial arts? Wing Chun and JKD. What's the inside places to train and people to train with? And, he didn't say this was a two-parter, but now he says, and two-parter, any interesting stories you'd like to share of you in Hong Kong you think the podcast would enjoy?
This is a very good question. It's a
This
very
is the
Hong Kong-centric
question.
question, which is interesting because right now we are at the 4-year anniversary of when we went on our Hong Kong trip.
So crazy.
Yeah, and I know this because my social media, even my iPhone, keeps posting memories.
They don't let you forget.
They don't let you forget. It's all these crazy photos of you dancing in the MTR and all these Chinese people kind of looking at you and
Like,
looking away, right?
what's wrong with this
We had
guy?
such a good time in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned on the last couple episodes, we are definitely thinking of organizing a trip for Kung Fu Genius podcast listeners.
2023?
2023, traditionally, as I've mentioned multiple times, I bring a bunch of my students to Hong Kong, usually kind of late summer. So yeah, it is hot. If you're not a fan of hot, humid weather, then, go to Cleveland, Ohio, right? But if you don't mind hot weather, then come with us to Hong Kong because we definitely go in the hottest time of the year, so you do have to be ready for that. But I did every year. We usually brought a handful of students with us, and I basically do a tour of Hong Kong. So bring the students around to the different sites. Obviously, because I teach Wing Chun, bring the students to a lot of Wing Chun related places, Grandmaster Yip Man's grave, the Wing Chun Athletic Association, have them meet, whether it's students of Grandmaster Yip Man or go to places that are relevant to Wing Chun people.
The place where Yip Man used to live.
That's right. 149 Tung Choi Street, right?
Tung Choi Street.
And AKA Loyan Guy.
Loyang Guy.
Shout out to Ladies Street. It's also called Ladies Street because there's a flea market on there. So it was called Ladies
okay,
Street. No, it wasn't called Ladies Street for any other reason, right? So we'll do that stuff. And obviously because the students who came with me traditionally, obviously, there are students from City Wing Chun, so every morning we'll usually have some kind of training session. We go to Kowloon Park, do some physical fitness, do some Wing Chun training.
Hong Kong. No. Kung Fu Park.
Well, in Kowloon Park, they have Kung Fu Corner.
Kung Fu Corner.
Yes. So then we'll go there, we'll train, we'll do some physical exercise, then we'll earn our breakfast, and then we go out and we do Kung Fu stuff every day. So it's really like something that I had been doing for a few years, and every year it formalized, not in terms of being super regimented, but just like I started to kind of have my regular spots where I brought the students to. And, it would be like we'd get up in the morning, do our training, and then go have breakfast. And then we would go and do some kind of Kung Fu activity, whether it was meeting a Sifu of a certain style or going to see movie stuff or Bruce Lee stuff or Yip Man stuff or whatever. And then, at nighttime, we can enjoy the city, go get some food, that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
But in recent years, obviously with the pandemic, we weren't able to go. The last time I went to Hong Kong was 2019, which was exactly around this time of year in 2019, so the late summer, and that was my last time going to Hong Kong. So it's been a number of years since I've been there. I'm used to going once a year, and now that things seem to be normalizing a little bit in terms of what's going on in the world, I think that it's possible to start planning for a big Hong Kong trip in 2023.
Yeah.
So, but now instead of just opening it up for students at City Wing Chun, obviously now I've created this podcast in the meantime. If our podcast listeners are interested in going, then I can create like a tour and kind of a package for people to kind of hop along and come with us. And then we can do this tour and training and all these kind of things, right? So
I'm estimating about 40 people coming.
No, I'm going to cap it way lower than that. Yeah, because it's actually not fun when I am not I'm the best tour guide of Hong Kong, but I'm not a professional tour organizing person, right? So I don't want to be walking around with a goofy yellow hat and a little flag walking around trying to corral a bunch of 40 adults through the streets of Kowloon, right?
Okay.
So I will probably put a cap on it.
Oh,
right?
Cap at what?
And I don't know, but it'll be maybe 12 people tops. I don't want more than that. That's too much.
Man.
All right, that's too much. And only adults, no kids. I don't want to have to deal with that nonsense.
Well,
so,
adults, kids, it depends which adults are coming, really, doesn't it?
Well, many adults, once they're in Hong Kong, start acting like kids. All right. So anyway, that's something. And I know we keep getting comments about people want more information about it. But the problem is I can talk about it. It's something that I want to do. But I need to wait a little bit because we have to find out what the regulations are for traveling to Hong Kong. People always go, where do I get information? I go, at this time, we could not do this trip because they still have kind of a long quarantine time when you get into Hong Kong. Yeah. And so I can't tell people now.
5 days, 7 days?
Yeah, well, the problem is it's changing every few weeks. So whatever we say by the time this episode comes out, it's going to be old info anyway. So the problem is people keep asking. So I'm super excited because we obviously have a lot of people who are interested in coming to Hong Kong and doing the Kung Fu Genius Hong Kong tour. But I can't tell anybody right now. This is a year out. And given the current policies of traveling to Hong Kong, we could not do it right now. And until those policies change, I can't plan it. I can't in good faith assume that 1 year from now, we'll just be able to travel to Hong Kong the way we used to be able to. So I have to wait a little bit. But I promise the KFG podcast listeners, because I keep getting messages about it, which is great, because obviously that means people want to go. But I have to tell everyone, I don't have any information because I literally cannot plan it right now until they change something.
What's crazy is what I'm foreseeing right now. I'm foreseeing so many people want to go to Hong Kong with you.
Right.
That you have to split it up into 4 different vacations per year, or maybe 5 seasonals.
I don't want to go to Hong Kong 5 times a year. I actually, in 1 year, I think it was back in 2011, I traveled to Hong Kong 4 times in 1 year.
Yeah.
And
what year was this?
That was 2011. All right.
Oh, he just said that.
Literally, he just said
he just
2011.
said
Ladies
it.
and gentlemen, you just witnessed Dre in real time. All right, okay? All right? This is
Unedited.
unedited, all right?
Yeah.
In 2011, I went there 4 times. Whoa, what year was that?
What year was that?
All right?
How many times did you go?
Yeah, 4. So, and I love traveling to Hong Kong. I don't mind that trip at all.
Yeah.
But 4 was definitely my limit. And
Damn.
I'm thinking about it now. That was also 11 years ago. I'm 11 years older right now. So
I know why, because of the flight. The flight is brutal in the sense.
actually, the flight doesn't, you know.
Oh,
it's-
no. Getting back.
Oh, you mean the jet lag?
The jet lag
Yeah,
getting
the jet
back
lag getting
is-
back is a little harder. Well, you're a lot less motivated when you come home than when you go there.
Yeah.
You're a lot more motivated to get on the new, time schedule when you're over there. So anyway, and I say this, people are always like, tons of people are texting me about this thing, right? People say that because they're bullshit. I'm literally not bullshitting. I get messages and comments because we mentioned it a few times about going to Hong Kong, and I really get a lot of comments
I'm
about
down,
it. Yeah.
Sifu.
And people keep asking me, like, I need information. It's like, we don't have it yet, all right? I cannot say right now what the dates are or
Slow
anything
down,
like
Tito.
that. But yeah, slow down, Tito, all right? But also people somehow think that if I do plan a Hong Kong trip, I'm going to make it a secret. No. The moment we have all the deets to go to Hong Kong, I'm going to be talking about it on this episode. On this podcast, literally every episode.
Gotcha.
And I'll put it on my socials and everything like that. So we are not going to keep it a secret from anyone that we're going to do this Hong Kong
But the
thing.
cap
But
is
until
rough.
I don't want more than 12 people on a trip like that. I don't want to corral 25.
I got you.
And the problem is when you have that many adults, well, this adult doesn't want to do this. This adult cannot eat this food. I'm going to have maybe no vegetarians on this trip.
Well,
Hey!
I tell you, because every time we go to Hong Kong, there's one freaking vegetarian, and it's like, it's like we're gonna go to this famous place for beef noodles. We got one.
I've
vegetarian
graduated
with
to
us.
carnivore.
Good.
Carnivorism.
Congrats.
Yay.
All right?
That's not a graduation. That's a demotion.
No, that's total
No,
graduation.
that is a total promotion.
Like, I'm
right
eating
there.
motherfucking burgers.
Jeez.
I'm eating burgers.
Yeah, make sure
Burgers.
you do the old
Chicken.
you watch his f-bombs there, Andrew.
Oh,
but
sorry.
seriously, right? Really, like I'm going to suddenly see a Dre I've never seen before.
Like,
You're going to start looking like me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That shave my head will be interchangeable.
That's
no.
right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so anyway, maybe there'll be one rule, no vegetarians, because it just makes it so damn difficult to like, you have 25 adults, and then it's like you go to a place that's famous for like Hoi Lam chicken, and it's like, oh, we have one vegetarian. Well, you can't eat here because this is all they serve, right? So I don't know, maybe I'll just say no vegetarians.
Hoi Lam.
Fine.
Chicken.
I'm going to come anyway, and I'll come on my own trip. And
That's
I'll
right,
just
bring
be
your
like
own
that.
food.
Yeah,
Yo.
that'll teach
Potato
you.
chips
Meal
or whatever you
prepping.
can eat, right? Yeah. So anyway, I'm half joking about the vegetarian, but I like to emphasize I'm half joking. All right. So we'll probably cap it at about 12, just because after that it's just not tenable.
All right, now what if
I would prefer even smaller than that, like 8.
But what if you got like a
But I can do it more than one time a year.
You got the VIP group that's with you, and then you got the subgroup that
Well, it's also possible
that
for
are
example,
with maybe Mikey Deane.
No, because that would be the worst thing in the world to travel to Hong Kong. Have to be with Mikey Deane. All right, here you are with the colonizer of Hong Kong.
Oh, no.
All right, who doesn't know shit about Hong Kong, right? Like most of the colonizers who live there.
Yeah, but I can take you to the best clubs. I will find them.
Yeah, they'll let him in just with his accent, right? So.
Wan Chai.
Yeah. So here's what I'm thinking. Like, it's possible if people really want to do this, that I could do it more than once a year, because I really don't want to do that big of a group. I don't want to be there with a hat and a flag waving around 30 adults. Like, come over here, take a look at this building over here. Like, I don't want to do that, right?
That's why we'll have to have someone.
Well,
on that tip.
the other thing too is I would imagine that many of our podcast fans don't actually practice Wing Chun. They're just into martial arts, or they're into Bruce Lee. So it's possible for me to have like a few different tiers for the
you
tours.
know what would be lit?
What?
Going to Shaw Brothers Studios.
There's really
Golden
nothing to see there.
Harvest Studio. Well,
there's
the
no Golden
location.
Harvest Studios anymore.
The location.
The Golden Harvest Studios is now a bunch of apartments.
The parking lot.
No, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Shaw Brothers is you can go there, but there's nothing to see, and they're not going to let you in. But there are but I could potentially bring you to see Shaw Brothers movie stars as opposed to like just the old thing, whatever, right? So that's what I'm thinking is that maybe for the tour we can have some people might want to do like the martial arts training and the tour. Some people might just come for the tour, that kind of thing. So I can have like a couple different options for people if this is because some people might not be interested in the martial arts part, or maybe they don't train Wing Chun, or they don't want to train Wing Chun with me or whatever. That's fine. Who
would?
No, you don't get upset about that. People are very like, I got my Wing Chun. It's like, okay, that's fine. All right. Yeah, I'm sure you have your truth. Everyone has their truth,
Everyone
right?
has
That's
their
fine.
truth. All right.
So that's okay. So maybe I'll do something like that. But anyway, let's actually get to the question. Hey, Kung Fu Genius listeners, if you're looking for an easy way to support this podcast, please consider joining the Kung Fu Genius Patreon. You can support for as little as $5 a month and get access to episodes a few days early. Higher levels of support get additional goodies, exclusive content, and even your name in the description. The baller level of support will give you the opportunity to be a Dre for a day and give me a rest from this guy over here. A link for the Kung Fu Genius Patreon page is in the description below. You can also support us by subscribing to the Kung Fu Genius on YouTube, liking this video, and sharing it on your social media platforms. When you subscribe on YouTube, don't forget to hit that bell for notifications so you will know as soon as a new episode or a premiere is available for you to watch. For those of us who listen to us on audio, it's a huge help if you don't just rate the podcast, but also write a review wherever you listen to the Kung Fu Genius, such as Apple or Google Podcasts. I really appreciate it. And now back to me.
Oh, the question.
Yeah. So the question, what was the first part of the question again?
The first part of the question, what is your opinion on Hong Kong as a destination to visit as a white guy?
Okay.
Because
I have experience.
during martial arts.
Not a Cuban guy,
Not a Cuban guy.
a white guy.
So I will take away my Cuban
Yes.
half, all right?
Yeah.
And
Just
just
throw
go
the
on,
shit
just
to
go
the
on the
side.
German side.
Yeah.
All right?
All right.
What does my German side think of Hong Kong?
Okay. And are the best places to go in relation to martial arts, Wing Chun, and JK?
Got it. Okay. So just a couple things.
Oh, inside places to train and who to train with.
Okay. So a couple things I have to note here is always your mileage may vary because, of course, when we're talking about the varied world of Wing Chun, well, it also depends on your lineage, right? So, I mean, if you come from a particular lineage and you like the way that lineage does stuff, then you might not necessarily want to just go and train in another lineage. Now, some people it's weird. I can't give advice about something like this because for some people, they learn a certain lineage of Wing Chun or they learn their style of Wing Chun or whatever, and they're very particular to it. And they want to just continue learning that or they want to learn that more in depth. So if someone comes from the Leung Seung system and they go to Hong Kong, they're more than likely going to want to train in someone from the Leung Seung system, which makes sense because they want to go to the source or the root of their lineage, their styling, go a little bit deeper, right? Mm-hmm. So if someone is not from, let's say, the Leung lineage like I am, then my recommendation, most of my insider recommendations would be within my own lineage, right? So one, that's an issue. But then there are other people who don't give a crap at all, maybe because they are really open-minded or they just have no idea that there are major differences between the Wing Chun styles. They just think it's all kumbaya and hand-holding, right? So then for them, they don't really care because if they're doing Wing Chun in
Sticky
Hong Kong,
hand-holding.
Yeah, they're not really that. They don't discern between this guy and that guy. It's Wing Chun in Hong Kong, right? Okay. So it's very difficult to give that advice, right? Because if someone comes from the Leung Ting lineage, I would give very specific pieces of advice of who to go to, and that list is very, very small. And doesn't include Leung Ting. Really, I wouldn't. If someone was in the Leung Ting lineage and wanted to go to Hong Kong to train Leung Ting Wing Chun, I would actually not suggest they go to Leung Ting school unless they want to be treated kind of poorly from their own family. There are other Leung Ting lineage members in Hong Kong who would much more happily greet them and teach them more. But then if someone, I don't know, I almost feel like if someone was from the Wong Zun Leung lineage, I probably could give them way more recommendations in Hong Kong than I could from my own lineage, unfortunately. So as far as JKD goes, I would not go to Hong Kong to learn JKD. All right, because first of all, where were all of Bruce's real JKD students? They were here in the States.
In the States.
Okay, so it's kind of like people who go to Brazil to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Or people who go to Japan to learn like Aikido. It's like you got to go to the source of where the style is if you really want to, find the best. And Jeet Kune Do is not something that was broadly taught in Hong Kong. I know that Burton Richardson has some guys over there, and I know there are some JKD groups and so on. But I wouldn't say that Hong Kong, just because Bruce Lee is from there, is the mecca of JKD. Asia in general and China in particular, not Hong Kong, China in particular, you can forget anything learning Bruce. You don't want to learn anything Bruce Lee related in China because they don't know anything about what Bruce Lee actually did. They just think, if you pick up a Jeet Kune Do book in mainland China, it's sketches of moves out of Bruce Lee's movies. It's not his actual Jeet Kune Do. Amazing. Right? So I wouldn't necessarily go all the way to Hong Kong to learn JKD. All right? You go to Hong Kong to learn Wing Chun, for example, if that's your style, or there are obviously other styles of Chinese martial arts that are very prominent in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, you have the whole Lam Chou family, and other branches of Hong Kong, which kind of escape me at the moment. So I apologize to my Hong Kong friends who are from branches outside of Lam Chou. I'm not trying to leave you out. It's early in the morning. I can't think of any other ones right now off the top of my head. Obviously, Choi Lei Fut. I have some good friends in Hong Kong who are really high level in Choi Lei Fut, like Zhou Guang. Sifu Zhou Guang is like amazing. And then obviously our good friend Mak Sifu, who's like a Hong Kong master extraordinaire, the Southern martial arts. But another martial art that is really very well, or I should say widespread in Hong Kong, and they teach it with a really high level of quality, is Thai boxing. Thai boxing has been big in Hong Kong for a while, and you have a lot of Thai boxing gyms in Hong Kong, right?
I was just watching Ong Bak last night.
Yeah.
That's a sick movie.
It is.
Well,
it is
Ong
awesome.
Bak 2.
Yes.
I was watching clips of it, but man, I got to see the ending and all that.
You can't actually sit through a whole movie.
The ending with the ninjas and all that.
Right.
Anyway, I saw pictures.
I saw pictures. I saw a trailer.
Yeah.
Coming soon. All right. So actually, Thai boxing is I would say, is probably the most professionally taught art in Hong Kong. Like where you could find it. I mean that most of the Hong Kong Thai boxing gyms teach it in a professional way, much more so than Chinese martial arts. Chinese martial arts schools are kind of very rinky-dink in Hong Kong, and they're not very professional. But Thai boxing schools are usually pretty good. And because of Hong Kong's proximity to Thailand, a lot of Hong Kong Thai boxing gyms will actually hire trainers from Thailand to come to Hong Kong, let's say for like 3 months at a time.
Wow.
So you'll go to a Thai boxing gym in Hong Kong, and oftentimes they will be a Thai boxing trainer from Thailand there at the gym. So you can get really authentic quality instruction in Thai boxing.
Insane.
So if people want to do
that.
Thai boxing, most of my Thai boxing training over the years has been in Hong Kong. So when I would go to Hong Kong, at the time that I was learning from Sifu Leung Teng, there was one Thai boxing gym I would go to regularly, and I would train there a couple
You
times
earned
a
your
week.
shorts too.
Earn my shorts?
Yeah.
No, we got shorts on the first day.
Oh, no.
We didn't have to earn our shorts.
No.
Because you train with no shorts until you earn them. So it was pretty good. His name was Pak Wing Heung. It was a very famous Thai boxing.
Pak Wing Hearn.
Yeah, very famous Thai boxing fighter in Hong Kong. And I go to his gym. All right, I didn't train with him. He was there sometimes, but I would train at his gym. It was not too far from Sifu Leung
Wasn't
Teng
Tony
school.
Jaa.
Wasn't Tony Jaa. Tony Jaa is actually, from what I understood, a gymnast who then adapted Thai martial arts to gymnastics, which is why
He's remarkable.
He's amazing. Tony Jaa's amazing. So the first part of the question, it's difficult for me to give recommendations on where to train, and this is also why when we do our tour, I usually train my students when we're over there. So I'll go and I'll give them lessons, and then we'll go and we'll visit some Sifus or whatever. I think it's a little bit of a culture shock sometimes when Westerners see how they train in Hong Kong, because there's this assumption, obviously it's the source, and this is like the right way to do things and everything. And the Hong Kong teaching system has its merits. The traditional Chinese teaching system has its merits. For if you look at a Venn diagram of all the overlapping factors you need to have of like self-motivated, self-starting, and visual learners, usually are the ones that can pick up training or pick up information easiest in Hong Kong, because most of what we would call a class in Hong Kong is just kind of like semi-guided training. All right, you kind of show up, and maybe a Sihing might show you a form, or then you're paired off with someone and you practice. But there's no real lesson structure. There's no real step-by-step progression in terms of like, okay, you learn these things, then you learn these things. Now, mind you, of course there are exceptions. Of course there are schools that have that, but not at the when I say there's really no teaching structure in Hong Kong, and people say, no, that's not true. You got to learn the Unum Tao first, and then you learn these steps, and then you do Danchi, and then you do this. I mean, outside of the most basic framework, there's no lesson plan. There's no real bit-by-bit progression, unless if you're learning privately, but not in a group class. So you kind of show up, and you're kind of like expected to practice on your own, and hopefully there's a senior there who can correct you and give you some guidance.
Wow.
So usually my recommendation for Westerners, regardless of whether they are white or not, I don't know how relevant that is. If you're just a foreigner to Hong Kong, regardless of your ethnicity, my recommendation is to take private lessons instead of going to group lessons. Unless you're going to do something like Thai boxing, which they have their shit together in terms of group lessons in Hong Kong. If you're going to go to a Wing Chun school, I would suggest doing private lessons with the instructor, because then you force that instructor to be there for you for that time and teach you. Whereas if you show up to a group class, you might just show up to a room of a bunch of people who, obviously, if you're a foreigner, are most likely speaking Chinese, so you don't understand, and who are kind of training more or less on their own with some light guidance from an instructor. And so you're going to, for the most part, you'd be kind of lost, and you'd be craving some kind of structure. So don't frustrate yourself by going to group classes in Hong Kong. Just take private lessons from the instructor.
Now, I'm like, you have a grand student, Martin, who has lived in Hong Kong for some time. I'm curious of his training regimen out there.
He couldn't do it. Yeah. There was nowhere for him to train out there because he's used to showing up like this class as a structure. All right. You have, for example, at City Wing Chun, we start off with some kind of self-defense, basic stuff to get it out of the way. It's like, eating your vegetables at first, right? Let's review some bear hug defense or some rear choke defense or something. You eat your vegetables for get it out of the way, so all the fun stuff comes in class. Man. So that's why we start with like a little self-defense. Then we have our warm-up, then we do our form, and then, for the more advanced students, we'll start with some Chi Sao as a warm-up, some basic, right? And then I'll have the lesson for the day, depending on what level they are at, what they're learning. And then we usually intensify it. So we'll have some kind of either Guo Sao, Chi Sao sparring, or regular sparring Wing Chun versus non-Wing Chun, and then usually some workout at the end, and then some kind of cool down and stretching, right? So you have a class that follows an intensity arc, right? You start with like the self-defense, and then you have your warm-up and your form, and then, your basics and your partner training, and it's very technical. And then you start to peek into sparring, whether it's Chi Sao or regular sparring. And then you have this kind of intensity there, like 3/4 into the class. And then before you let them go, you don't want to leave them up here where they're like, Then you got to pare it down a little bit. So you wear them out at the end with a workout, and then you kind of cool off at the end, relax, and you recap the class. So everyone leaves the class calm, and they had their technical training, their sparring, all that kind of stuff, right?
They're not going out there and beating people's ass.
Exactly. But you see, that we do that every class at City Wing Chun. The instructors here follow kind of a class syllabus so that everyone learns what they're supposed to learn. The class itself has a structure, and then you go to Hong Kong as one of my students, and you're in a room of people who are just kind of training Chi Sao. Some guys are just trying to hit each other. Some guys are just trying to do a drill. Some guys are just trying to do, or you go and you hit the wall bag without any supervision. And it's like, or I shouldn't say not supervision, without any instruction, because at some point you have to train on your own. So don't get me wrong. Like the merit to the Hong Kong training system is that you take personal ownership of your skills. You have to go and train it, and you have to own it, right? But the problem is, the onus on the instructor to give quality instruction is not there. The onus in the traditional Chinese teaching system is always on the student to produce and perform, to earn the right to learn the next thing. And I find that that's a bit of a dichotomy, because you can also teach the students as the instructor really thoroughly and really well, and they still can own it and train it and earn the next thing. So my issue with the Hong Kong teaching system is that it's not a dichotomy. Like Westerners like to kind of spoon feed and teach details, and in Asia they just train really hard and figure it out on their own and work and develop their kung fu. I don't see that there has to be a dichotomy between those two things.
Ooh,
You can give the students quality instruction, step-by-step instruction, a thought-out lesson plan and progression with a plan to bring them somewhere. And they can also train really hard and earn the right to learn the next thing and work really hard at the material and take personal ownership of it. It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? So, I remember in Germany, there were some instructors, they would spend their whole time, like a 1 hour class would be like a TED Talk. They would just talk the whole time on the virtues of Bong Sao and this and that. And the other thing, and at the end of the class, we weren't even sweating, right?
Wow.
Some instructors, all right? Not most of them, but there's some like that. They're very heady, all right? And then you had other instructors who you're practicing and they're not really telling you what to do. And then maybe they come by and they kick your stance or they fix your bong sao or something like that and they walk away. And that was your instruction for the day. So why are these the only two options we have? They're not. All right. It's just that for some reason, people always have dichotomous thinking when it comes to teaching styles. You either let the students figure it out on their own, or you baby them and spoon feed them, but you can't do something in between, or you can't have a little bit of both, right? And so I feel that all practitioners of martial arts need to take what they're learning from their instructor and digest the material on their own, practice it, think about it, think how it relates to other things they learn. The student is the one that has all their work cut out for them,
okay?
Right? But that doesn't mean that the instructor cannot serve it up in bite-sized pieces, in an intelligent way, structured in a way that they're going to be able to digest the material, right? So this idea that there has to be one or the other. So my suggestion is you should find someone potentially in your lineage and do private training with them. Yeah. And also you have to, my advice is, you even have to curb your expectations of what private training is. So,
interesting.
The question also had like whether I had some interesting stories. I have a lot of stories of my time in Hong Kong, and I would love to talk about. And I have talked about we did have the Fight Quest episode, and we brought up like our Van Damme story and some funny. We have had a lot of funny stories in Hong Kong, but I want to actually talk about something that pissed me off.
Oh,
okay, and so a let's just say a less than positive experience I had at Hong Kong.
What?
All right. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, like it's like I got another Bill Nye on my sites, right? Okay. But
I know this story? Have I heard this story?
You may know this story. So around 2011, I quit Sifu Leungting's organization, right?
Okay.
So I used to be Sifu Leungting's New York representative, yada, yada, right? I'm a rebel. I became a rebel, right? And then I went on my own, and then I was essentially independent. And there were a couple WT instructors that I had not learned from or had not met in my family because they had already left the association. So while I was still part of Leungting's association, obviously there's certain Sifus I cannot meet with because they're rebels. They left Leungting. So, I'm part of the Leungting organization. I cannot meet them. Really, they have all these weird culty rules. And so once I quit, then I'm like, oh, well, I can go visit certain Sibaks in Hong Kong.
The other rebels.
Yeah, to see if, because we come from the same lineage. So maybe they have another way of looking at things, right? So I met a few of my Sibak that I had not previously trained with. And so I trained with one in particular for a while, and he gave me a lot of really good looks because it's almost like getting an outside eye.
All right.
Sometimes, the best thing for students, sometimes, well, even within City Wing Chun, we have a number of instructors. And let's say a student learns from a certain instructor for a while, and then within our school, they go to another Sifu's class. That Sifu can usually point out things that their own Sifu can't, just because you get used to seeing your students after a while, and you get used to kind of their tempo and maybe what their common mistakes are, and you see how they're getting better over time, so you don't harp on certain things because you know that they're making progress. Whereas an outside instructor will just be like, yo, you need to fix this, because they don't know that this is something you're struggling with or this is something you got better at. So sometimes an outside eye might point out things that your regular instructor doesn't, just by virtue of you have a fresh set of eyes looking at you, right?
Right.
So for me, I always felt that even within my own lineage, it should be good to get a couple fresh eyes. Like, hey, look at my wooden dummy. Even if I learned it from Sifu Learning Tang, someone else can give me some advice or some pointers or whatever, right? So I trained with one of my Sibaks for a while, and my Sibak had a senior student, or has a senior student, who's just kind of a prick, all right? And you have to imagine, and this is always my issue with the kind of very patriarchal Chinese Kung Fu family terms that we use in martial arts. So, because it comes from a point of respect. Your Sifu is your teacher, the one who's adopted you as a disciple. You respect your Sifu, but you also inherit a family structure from that, right? If your Sifu is like your Kung Fu father, then all the students who started before you, who are male students, are your Siheng, elder Kung Fu brother, older, younger brothers of your Sifu are your Sibak, your Sizuk, so on and so forth, right? So you have this like family structure, and, you have to greet your seniors by, Siheng, Sibak, all those kind of things, which I'm all for. Like, I like that Chinese culture aspect to what we do. It makes it a little bit deeper than just learning punching and kicking, in my opinion, right? Okay. But the problem is that there's always two sides to everything. There's also a massive potential for abuse within that kind of system. And what I mean is this: if someone started before you, so like in Chinese Kung Fu family terms, like your Siheng, your elder Kung Fu brother, doesn't have to actually be biologically older than you in age. Right. They just needed to have started before you under the same Sifu, right? That means that someone who started one day before you is your Siheng. Yeah. Okay? And that's all well and good, and that's fine, right? And in theory, if someone started before you, then they should be better than you because they have more time and more experience. And of course, you respect them because they started before you, right? The problem is that there's how these things work in theory and how these things work in practice, all right? So for example, someone starts 1 week before you. You call them Siheng, all right? After 3 months, they quit, you keep training, okay? 10 years later, you're an instructor at that school, all right? That person who started a week before you comes back, they're still your Siheng. Yeah. Okay? Even though they haven't trained in those 10 years, okay? Now that's fine because it's about your relationship to your Sifu or whatever, but when the rubber hits the road, you put in 10 years of training and they did not. And you call them Siheng out of respect, all right? But in terms of the skill, you're the one with the skill. Now, Grandmaster Yip Man supposedly said the one with the skill is the senior, but that actually flies in the face of the traditional Confucius patriarchal setup with Sifu, Siheng, and all that kind of stuff, right? So the problem is, within Chinese martial arts, you have a lot of lazy Sihengs because the fact that someone started before you doesn't guarantee an equivalent outcome after the same amount of time. And the fact that someone started in the 70s, well, someone could have started in the 70s, trained for 6 months, and has not trained since then. And now they are not just your senior, they've been training since the 70s. But in reality, they did Wing Chun for a short time in the 70s. That's how it should be phrased. Not, this is your Sibak who's been training since the 70s. No. This is your... And I'm not talking about the Sibak I learned from. I'm talking about the Sibaks within that school, right? This is your Sibak who's been training since... No, this is my Sibak who did Wing Chun for 3 years in the 1970s. Okay? So, in theory, he's been doing it for a long time. You should respect him, so on and so forth. So anyway, my Sibak in Hong Kong had a student it's not his Todai, but the guy also happens to be a Sibak of mine. So like two Sibaks. One I'm learning from, and the other one is learning from my other Sibak, right? Because the story was, he learned Wing Chun in the 70s, and then he moved to, of all places, Long Island. Wow. Okay? And he's so old school, he's actually in the Wing Chun Kun book, Grandmaster Ling Ting's old book, right? He's in there, like, that's how old school, because that book came out in 1976, right? But so he was like some kind of technician in Hong Kong, and then he moved to Long Island, where he's lived for the most part. But then in 2011, when I started going to Hong Kong to learn from the Sibak, that other Sibak from Long Island, I guess he retired, and he moved to Hong Kong, all right? Okay. To be retired in Hong Kong. He moved back to Hong Kong, basically, right? And started picking up Wing Chun again after all that time. but he's severely out of practice because while he was living in Long Island, he was not from the 70s until 2011.
Yeah.
He didn't really do any Wing Chun. All right,
man.
which is fine. I mean, like that's not a there's no judgment on that, right? I mean,
No
like,
judgment.
he came here to work. I mean, he has to raise a family, whatever. I'm not going like, oh, he let his Wing Chun skills slip. I don't know. It's not my problem, all right? But he went back to Hong Kong. And then he started picking up Wing Chun again with my Sibak, but very casually. But mostly just him talking about the old days and how things used to be, not actually like really training, right? So anyway, I did a private lesson with my Sibak, and this guy was there during my private lesson. Now, the thing with my Sibak in Hong Kong is he doesn't speak any English, all right? But the one who lived in Long Island does speaks some English, right? So, first of all, I paid for a private lesson. So, from a Western perspective, the assumption is I paid you for a lesson. You're going to teach me.
Privately.
There's no audience
Yeah.
that gets to learn what I paid for. Okay? All right?
Yeah.
I paid for the lesson. Why does that guy get to
kinda see
sit
where
there
this is going.
and then
Yeah.
I'm the one who's paying $150, $200 for the lesson, right? US. And that guy's sitting
How's
there
this
and
guy
getting the lesson.
benefiting?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
guy benefiting.
Yeah.
Oh, because he's the senior? That dude is so out of... No, he's watching the lesson for free. All right? Whatever. But I'm personally, like, for me, I'm not like, oh, God, he needs to give me some money or whatever like that. It's just something that I notice. But if he's a real senior, I'm totally fine with him sitting. I have no problem with that. The problem began is while I'm training with my Sibak, I understand Cantonese, okay? And so while he's teaching me, my spoken Cantonese is very simple, especially at that time. But it's enough for me to say, to tell him yes, no, okay, left side, right side, forward, back, okay, like this, like that, do it that way, So I can communicate, my Sibak can speak Cantonese to me and I understand, and then I do what he wants me to do and I answer him back in simple Chinese, right? And then this guy, all right, let's just call him Norm, all right, okay? All right? He sits there and he starts giving commentary on my lesson, all right? Like, do you know what is fuksao or something like that, right? It's like, first of all, I'm a Wing Chun instructor. You ask me, do I know what fuksao is, right? And then I just looked at him. I'm like, it was before my lesson even started. I'm like, yes, I've been teaching in New York for, at that time, 10 years or something like that, right? I have heard of fuksao. Yes, thank you. And then I'm training, and then he would say some stuff, right? And like he would try to give me corrections
From his seat.
Yes. And then I just turned to him and I said, like, I'm sorry. I turned to him and said in English, I'm sorry, but I'm here learning with my Sibak. I will let him correct me. All right? And so he kept, like, saying all these things, right? And then I was just, after that lesson, I told my Sibak, I said, I don't mind taking more private lessons with you, but he cannot be here.
Yeah.
Because I just can't deal with him, right? Because, like, he's giving me, he's saying all sorts of weird things, right? And then remember I told you I went to Hong Kong 4 times in 2011?
That was the year.
That was the year, right?
I remember now.
So then apparently this guy Norm, all right, was still going back and forth to New York, right?
Oh.
And then so anyway, I go back to Hong Kong and Norm is there again. And Norm comes to me and I just see him and I'm like, oh man. He's like that guy when you see him, you're like, And he goes, I went back to New York in the since I saw you last time. And he goes, and I was in Manhattan and I walked by your school. And I was like, oh, great. Why didn't you come by and say hi? And then he said something really odd. He's like, I didn't ask my Sibak's permission to go to my school, right? Which is funny because one, he's supposedly very senior. Why he needs to ask for permission to just stop by and say hi is a little bit beyond me because my Sibak is not his Sifu, right? So I don't understand, like, why he has to ask my Sibak, who's not even my Sifu.
Rebel.
No. This was already when I'm learning from my Sibak, right? But it's just weird, like, why does he have to ask my Sibak, who's not even my Sifu or my Sigo, to come to my Sibak? It was very strange, right? And then he said this shit to me while my Sibak was sitting there, who doesn't understand any English, so he doesn't know it. He doesn't understand this conversation at all, right? And this guy's like just this like snake who like he's saying this stuff to me, and he's like trying to kick me down. knowing full well that my Sivak doesn't understand it. And he's like, right, like kind of flaunting it, right? And then so he goes, I stood in front of your school. Now our school at that time, with a 4th and 5th floor, right? So you can see from the ground, you can see up. He goes, yeah, I looked up to your space. And he's like, wow, you have 2 floors. That's very impressive. But he said it in such a way like he was like pissed off that I had a big school, right? And then he goes, and Dre, I shit thee not. Because like he said this to me and I was just like blown away, all right? He goes, I saw your student leaning or right by the window, like just kind of standing there leaning by the window. And he goes, looks like your students are very lazy. He said that to me. And it was so like, it was so off-putting because it was like, I had to look around. I'm like, dude, am I on a hidden camera show here? Like, is this guy clowning me, right? Okay. Because at that time I figured out he had actually seen. At that time I had an assistant. And he was Mike, a Chinese assistant. He worked the front desk.
He had to be across the street.
Yeah, he had to be across the street watching. But then what Mike would do is like at that time, if he had to send something from the phone, because a number of years ago there was bad cell phone reception there, he would always go to the edge and then he would send the messages by the window over there, right? Okay, and this guy Norm sees my employee sending a text message by the window, and then decides to say that all of my students are lazy. And the thing is, like, that really pissed me off because my students are many things, as we know, Dre. Occasionally podcast hosts, co-hosts, right?
Many things under the sun.
My students are not lazy. My students work hard, right? And like, it's funny. You can insult me as an instructor. So you don't like my Wing Chun or you don't like what I teach or whatever. That's fine. But you can't insult my students. It's like
interesting.
That really at that time really bothered me. What? And I was like, oh, really? Oh, you say my students are lazy because you saw a student of mine by the window? Wow. He says, yeah, they weren't training. I go, do you know if there was a class going on when you watched?
Yeah.
Because you didn't even bother to come up. And he's like, oh, like that, and kind of walked away, right? So anyway, I'm like, this freaking guy.
Long Island
That's
mentality.
the thing. He's not actually insulting the students. He's insulting you. He is insulting you by
yeah,
saying
that's his kind of Chinese way of trying to insult me,
it's
right?
like, rather than just coming and calling you a prick.
So it continues on. So a few years later, I go back to get a certificate of the so to get my fifth level master certificate or whatever, right? And so I do some. We show up and they want to do some cheese out. Like, hey, everyone, let's cheese out with each other. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I'm doing cheese out with this guy or whatever, and then Norm walks up to me, and just to give you an idea, Norm's obviously an older guy, all right, but he's very stout and he's got like old man thick hand strength, right? Yeah. So he's not a weak guy. And then he comes up to me, and he goes, "Hey, let's do some cheese out," right? And I say, "Okay, fine, all right." I don't really like this guy, but I'm like, "All right, whatever." Okay. So we start doing cheese out, right? And his arms were just, it was like doing cheese out with a wooden dummy. He just held his arms really strong. All right, like he didn't want to move. So I just stuck to him. I'm like, well, if you don't move, I'm not going to move.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, and the problem is he's older, he's senior, right? And he starts with just super stiff arms, just like zombie Frankenstein arms.
Coming at
He just starts pressing forward. Now he's not doing any kind of like technique or anything like that, right?
Interesting.
And there's like the wall right behind me, right? And he's trying to just like, he's not using like a good Wing Chun technique like first attack or pak da or shoulder launch or whatever, right? He's just like trying to like old man strength me, right?
What?
And so as he pushed it, he came at me like it was like a full surge. So I just grabbed his head and I held my elbow right in front of his face.
Yeah.
All right. And then he goes, oh, and then I'm like, are we done? I mean, you're not doing cheese out with me. You're just trying to push through me, right? I'm just going to defend myself if you're going to do that, right? And he keeps pushing into me, so I'm on the wall. And I'm holding his head with my hands, and I have my elbow in his face.
Oh,
because
right.
I didn't actually hit him because he's a senior and he's an old man.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, are we done? And then he just keeps looking at me and smiling. And then I just put my hands in front of his face, and I tap like I'm putting my thumbs in his eyes. I'm like, are we done?
No. Oh, no.
I'm like, not actually, but I'm like, are we done? Are we done? Are we done? And he's like, oh, very good, very good, very good, right? And then he walked away like really pissed off, right? And I'm like, okay. There was no chi sao to be done. He just tried to push me on the wall. So I just defended myself, right? With using control. The next day we show up to get my certificate or something like that. And he starts talking to all the Chinese students there, saying like, Alex used Biu Tze on a senior. It was so disrespectful. You know why? Because he's my senior. And I use Biu Tze, which is like dangerous and deadly, on my senior. And I should respect my senior and not use Biu Tze. Well, that senior didn't respect me at all. He didn't even respect the art of Wing Chun to do Chi Sao. He just came at me trying to rush me. And Wing Chun is not just Chi Sao. Wing Chun is also, you have to learn to react when people try to do things to you. And for me, he wasn't trying to do Chi Sao. He was trying to bum rush me. So I reacted by, clinching him and putting my elbow in his face. Like, that's my Wing Chun reaction to what you're doing, which was not Chi Sao. All right? And then he's telling everyone, like, all this. And the funny thing is, I had told my Sibak, tell him not to come to the party where I get my certificate because I don't want to see him.
Oh.
He shows up anyway. But he shows up with this, like, grand scheme because he's angry with me. And he wants me to lose face in front of everyone, right? So we go to take a group photo. And Craig is there, Christy's there, all of my students are there, right? And
This is Hong Kong.
this is in Hong Kong at my Seabox gym,
they're
right?
all there?
Yeah,
Oh, I love
and they're
it.
all there for me to get my 5th level. So it was like 2014 or something like that, right? 2014. And so I get my certificate, and Norm is there. And then they go, hey, Norm, why don't you come in on the group photo? Because he was the only one who didn't want to stand in the group photo, right? Mind you, the only reason to be at my Seabox gym was for me getting my certificate. There was no other reason. There wasn't a test. There wasn't a class going on. So people showed up so they could be in this group photo where I got my certificate or whatever, right? And so he's just standing there, and he says in Chinese, I don't want to be in that group photo with him. So he did the whole thing just to show up so that I could lose face in front of everyone, right? And so I just said it's okay. I didn't want him here anyway. So it ended up kind of backfiring because I said, Sibak, I asked you I told him not to come, right? And he's here, and I don't want him in my photo anyway. So I don't know what his problem is. And then it just kind of
photo?
No, he just kind of backfired. He just stood there all grumpy and pissed off. And then I haven't seen Norm since. So, which is fine. But, I look back on it. And so that is,
This is
10 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that, right? Yeah. 8 years ago. And I was a little more hot-headed at that time. And I had a lot less patience for kind of bullshit. But now I've been a father for so many years, so your bullshit, your tolerance for bullshit goes up a little bit when you have 2 kids, and so I probably, if I was in the same situation now, would probably be a little bit more diplomatic and a little more chill about it. But for me, it's like I fly all the way to Hong Kong to take lessons. I don't need this kind of DVD commentary. Throwing shade at me while I'm having my lesson, or telling me that my students are lazy, or touching hands with me under the pretense of Chi Sao only to try to bum rush me in front of a bunch of other people, only to get upset when I actually defend myself. Right? It's like, I don't need that guy here. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of like a weird experience, because at City Wing Chun, like when our students train here, it's a good atmosphere. Everyone knows each other. They can train really hard. Occasionally, you bump an elbow in someone's head or something, and people don't take it personally because everyone's cool with each other, right? But because I don't have an atmosphere that breeds people like that are going to come back to my school in 40 years and walk around like they're the king of this place because they started a really long time ago, even though they haven't done it, right? So that is one of my less stellar Hong Kong stories. But no, going to Hong Kong is really great. Don't get me wrong, all right? After I spent all this time hyping up my Hong Kong trip only to shit on, how annoying it can sometimes be to train over there.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that was the first question, by the way.
First question.
That's fine. All right.
That's great.
Yeah. Wow. So anyway, when we have more information for the Hong Kong trip, I will definitely put it. It's so much fun because we take the students everywhere, all the Bruce Lee stuff, all the Wing Chun stuff. But I also do we also do touristy stuff, but the good touristy stuff. You know what I mean? Take students like places that are really cool. Go to the beach and go to the new territories and get some really good food. I know lots of really good spots. And,
Okay.
And, as you know, having come to Hong Kong with me, like, I'm the guy, like, we'll be in the middle of somewhere and I'll be like, look, there's a shortcut right here. We're going to go through there. Like, I really know it like the back of my hand.
All right, question.
Yeah.
So you say you haven't seen Norm since. So when we went to Hong Kong with you, he wasn't there.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right,
When we
all
went
right.
to that Seabox school,
Yeah.
he
All
wasn't
right.
there.
Okay.
I think he knows now after that incident not to show up.
Man.
Yeah,
Oh,
just like
man.
you know what? I was most salty with him for talking shit about my students. Eh? How do you look at one person by the window, 4 floors up?
Did he
by
climb to that roof or
No,
something?
he was just down there on the street, 4 floors down. He sees someone by the roof, and his assessment is that my students are lazy. Have you seen how most students walk around during a Wing Chun class in Hong Kong? Like, they hit the wall bag, train with the seeing a little bit, sit down, they look at their phone, walk around a little bit. I mean, like, come on, dude, take it easy. Take it easy. All right. All right, what else we got? Hey, Kung Fu Genius listeners, are you a fan of Wing Chun Kung Fu? Well, if you listen to me, I assume you are. I got great news for KFG fans. Right now, you can get an all-access 1-month free trial subscription to Wing Chun Illustrated magazine. Yes, I said free. Go to WCINewsstand.com and register in the upper right-hand corner. Fill out your email and password and use the code KFG Trial to get your free trial to all the issues from 2011 to the current issue. That's right, all the issues, even the one with this cool guy on the cover. That's me for those of you listening to us on audio. My Kung Fu Genius column is also in all the new issues, as if you needed another reason to get this awesome magazine. Go get your free trial subscription today. For all that information, check out the description below. And now back to me.
All right. Next up, we got JJ Ma.
JJ Ma.
JJ Ma.
All right.
All right. Great insight into Yip Man's mindset toward teaching foreigners.
Oh, that's right. We had that episode about not teaching that Brit, which is a policy I still endorse.
Okay. I have a question that dips into Dyson territory.
Jesus.
What happened?
Let's go.
Given everything you know about Bruce Lee's life from Hong Kong, China to America, given what you know about Hong Kong culture and American culture,
Which is not much.
hypothetically
God, here we go.
speaking, do you think Bruce Lee gets to be Bruce Lee if he stayed in Hong Kong?
No.
Oh, there's more.
Okay, but that answer is very clear.
My hypothesis is that Bruce Lee would never have gotten a chance to be Bruce Lee as we knew him without his exposure to American culture.
Yep.
You see, I think what Bruce Lee did is what all American-born Chinese ABCs do. Because our acculturation was incomplete, we had to take from surrounding cultures in the area. Also, Bruce Lee uses the melting pot to his philosophy in JKD. Strip away the non-essentials until the truth is revealed.
Right.
Although I don't know if that's a direct Bruce Lee quote.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different things in that question unpacked. So first of all, no, I don't think. I mean, I love thought experiments, right?
Yeah.
What would happen if Bruce Lee had, not passed away? What happened if Bruce Lee, did a movie with this guy instead of that guy? What if Bruce Lee was able to finish Game of Death? There's lots of great thought experiments regarding Bruce Lee that you could really spend a lot of time and a lot of mental resources kind of cultivating. This one, I think, is pretty straightforward. If Bruce Lee did not come to the U.S., no, he would not be the Bruce Lee that we know. I think it's pretty obvious, right? Because Bruce had to hit certain roadblocks in the States in order to kind of push through and develop himself in different ways, right?
Would he have been like a Jackie Chan, but the Bruce Lee type of Jackie Chan? Like, I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Interesting. Would he have done maybe a good
No.
40 movies like a Jackie Chan?
No, I don't necessarily think so. No, I think that Bruce's path, especially going into films, even though he had done all those films when he was younger, I don't know how much his heart was in it at the time, 1959 when he left to the States. And I don't know how that would have changed had he continued just learning Wing Chun and got more into the martial arts stuff and not into the movie stuff. But he definitely would not be the Bruce Lee, you know. We would not have his photo all over the walls if it were that
He would have
case.
still been a great martial artist.
I have no idea. No, I mean, how do you know? How do you know?
So the American culture thing, it motivated him to be like the shit.
Well, I mean, you know, we usually make the most amount of progress when we hit a little bit of adversity and have to push through. You know, the obstacle is the way, right? And so in the States, he had that kind of in the martial arts a little bit. Also, the fact that he had not completed learning Wing Chun, so he had to then innovate, right? Because without the entire Wing Chun system, he couldn't claim to be teaching pure Wing Chun. So he had to then teach something under his own name, Chun Fan, right? Mm-hmm. And develop that into his own thing with, you know, various influences that he had. Either he had seen them stateside or other influences from Hong Kong. So he needed that in order to become kind of, for the Jeet Kune Do philosophy to breed, the incident with Wong Jack Man, all of those kind of things I think were kind of part and parcel to him doing it, you know, doing Green Hornet for a season and then getting rejected after the show was canceled, and then him constantly trying to push into Hollywood and get rejected, and then he started to do gigs and he started to be a trainer to the stars, which he didn't really want to do, and forcing him to go to Hong Kong to get into Hollywood around the back door. No, all of that was necessary, I think, for the Bruce Lee that we know to exist. I don't think there's much of a thought experiment there. If Bruce Lee had not gone to the States, no, I mean, we would not be. This podcast wouldn't exist. I'm pretty sure of that. So yeah, what was the other part of the question?
Surrounding cultures. Also, Bruce Lee uses a melting pot, strip away.
The Inessentials, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to Bruce Lee quotes, so I'm super brutal with this. Anyone who follows me on Instagram knows that when people post bullshit Bruce Lee quotes, I will call them out on it. There are a couple problems with Bruce Lee quotes. First of all, Bruce Lee was a copious note taker, right? Mm-hmm. So he took a lot of notes. Obviously, he has a lot of notes on his own style, Jeet Kune Do, but he has a lot of notes on things that he was reading, whether it was book on martial arts or books on philosophy or whatever. So when they started to put a lot of his notes into books, I think what some people didn't realize is those are not original Bruce Lee quotes. Those are Bruce's notes coming from books that he had read. So he liked this passage or he liked this saying, so he wrote it in there. But that's something he read from another book. So a lot of like Napoleon Hill or Dale Carnegie quotes, you know, Think and Grow Rich or How to Win Friends and Influence People, those books, which are two books that Bruce Lee read. A lot
I like Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, a lot of quotes that are attributed to Bruce Lee are actually either Napoleon Hill or perhaps even Dale Carnegie quotes. Oh, right. Because Bruce read those books and wrote those. So someone saw that in his notes and they're, a Bruce Lee quote, right? And although Bruce, from what I heard, was a huge follower of Alan Watts. And if you listen to Alan Watts can get really deep into stuff where like he'll say things and you'll go, holy cow. Like Alan Watts will say stuff and you'll be like, I need to stop the recording right now and just think about what he literally just said, because it's like it breaks your brain, right?
Okay.
And supposedly Bruce was a huge Alan Watts fan, and I have no reason to doubt that. But I don't think that he quoted Alan Watts that much, or that Alan Watts really was as much of an influence as, say, Krishnamurti was. Because when I look at a lot of Jeet Kune Do stuff and Jeet Kune Do quotes or quotes on Jeet Kune Do, that stuff seems like, because I have read a lot of Krishnamurti, that stuff seems like Bruce took some Krishnamurti ideas and then spun it for JKD and martial arts. And so I hear a lot of Krishnamurti-isms in Bruce's quotes. So, and those are not quotes. Like, again, you know, people say like, oh, well, those weren't original quotes. He was just copying someone else or plagiarizing someone else. No, these are his personal notes. never meant to be shown publicly. So Bruce would see something in a Krishnamurti line. And if you ever read Krishnamurti, the whole idea of kind of, breaking away at any kind of illusions and the formality of martial arts and systems and things like that, that was like Krishnamurti's whole thing of like chopping all of that stuff down, the systemization and cults and all. He was very anti that kind of stuff. And you see that a lot in Bruce Lee's writings. And it's very clear that Bruce saw something that Krishnamurti wrote that he liked, and then he would change it to JKD, or he would change it to martial arts or traditional martial arts for his own personal notes. Bruce never had any intention of that stuff being public. That was Bruce kind of creating his own philosophy while applying the philosophies of Krishnamurti to his own personal martial art, right? But that wasn't like, oh, Bruce is like plagiarizing this guy's quote and now Bruce is getting the credit. No, these are things either taken from Bruce Lee's notes and credited to Bruce Lee as if it was an original quote, which it wasn't necessarily, or on the other hand, people just take other quotes that they like and they just slap Bruce Lee's name on there, right? Like the old "you could teach your son to fish" kind of thing is now a Bruce Lee quote, right?
Oh, no.
Don't buy him a fish, teach him how to fish. Now that's a Bruce Lee quote somehow, right? And so
real?
yeah, like it's just ridiculous, right? And I always go, where's your source for this quote? Given the few interviews
You can lead
that
a horse to water.
right, that's also Bruce Lee,
That's
right?
Bruce Lee.
Given the finite number of interviews that Bruce Lee gave, all right, it's actually not that difficult to, when people put a Bruce Lee quote on there that you think is suspect, just ask them, where's your source for this quote? What interview or what book did this come out of? Because Bruce Lee didn't, besides the Green Wing Chun book and the Chinese Kung Fu, the Philosophical Art of Self-Defense, he didn't write any other books. Tao of Jeet Kune Do is not a book that Bruce Lee wrote. That's a book that came out posthumously, which was just a random slapshot connection or collection of his notes. Mm-hmm. So show me where your source is for this quote. Wow. Because remember, you don't have to go, oh, well, someone put it on a meme and put Bruce Lee's name on it, therefore they have an advantage. No. If someone makes a claim that something is a Bruce Lee quote, then the burden of proof is on the person making the claim. The burden of proof is not on you to disprove it. So when you see a bullshit Bruce Lee quote, also like a bullshit Yip Man quote, all right? Of which Yip Man only gave 2 interviews with New Martial Hero magazine. And there are a few articles about him in Hong Kong newspapers during Yip Man's lifetime, but those were not really interviews, those were articles about Yip Man. So really, if you want to get a sourced quote of Yip Man, then it's either New Martial Hero first interview or New Martial Hero second interview. Otherwise, you need to shut the hell up with your Yip Man quotes. All right? And so whenever you see a suspicious Yip Man quote, something that sounds like Western gobbledygook, attributed to Yip Man, and or a suspicious Bruce Lee quote, which sounds like something, from the Farmer's Almanac, just go,
Farmer's Almanac.
Where's the source of this quote? All right.
Wow.
Is it the Ted Thomas interview? Is it, the Alex Ben Block interview? Is it the Pierre Burton interview? Is it from Black Belt Magazine? Where did you get this quote?
Or is it from that secret phone call he had?
The secret phone call, yeah. All right. You could get cool Bruce Lee quotes out of that Dan Lee phone conversation, right? And some of those other interviews, right? But where's your source? All right. So that's kind of my issue with
which
Bruce Lee quotes.
Which quote that I thought was a Bruce Lee quote, that being dope is a skill.
Being dope is a skill?
Yeah.
No, actually, my favorite Bruce Lee quote is, "I like big butts and I cannot lie."
I liked, I don't care if it rains or freezes as long as I got my plastic Jesus. Bruce Lee. All right?
It's a great
He said
Bruce
that.
Lee quote.
He did say that, actually.
Yeah.
Being dope is a skill. No, we all know the quote, being dope is a skill, is Dre. All right?
You know that, yeah.
That is literally your bio on IG.
I got that from Bruce Lee, though.
You got that from Bruce Lee. Oh, okay, yeah.
I thought
but I
that
tell
was
you
Bruce
what,
Lee.
we talked about this before we recorded today. Every once in a while, I look at your IG bio because
Yeah.
normally you just, when you interact with people on IG, you don't necessarily look at their page. You just see what they posted, right?
Yeah, that's right,
But
right.
I'll go back there and I'll look at your page and you have that bio, which is being dope is a skill. And that is awesome.
I don't know where I came up with
I love that. I love that. We got to put that on a shirt, all right?
Preach.
Being dope is a skill.
Being dope
All right,
is
what
a
else
skill.
you got for me?
Wow, we got
Time for one more.
Time for one more. Not Dyson.
What? All right. I got a good one. Well, from a good questioner.
He's not even looking.
What do you mean?
Good.
It's right here.
Yeah. I can see it. I see a blank screen.
Food for thought.
Oh, food for thought. All right, here we go.
Okay,
so it is a legit good one.
Hey, Sifu Alex.
That's what's up.
A quick question. Do you have a favorite weapon you like to see in kung fu movies? Do you have favorite weapons only fight scene? Oh, okay. Do you have a favorite weapons only fight scene?
That's a great question. And shout out to Food for Thought. You guys should follow Food for Thought on Instagram. He's also on Twitter. And he's got a podcast called Food for Thought. Talks about kung fu films. And we even I did one episode, he interviewed me on there as well. So there's some KFG stuff on there too. It was a lot of fun. Really great. It's fun because like on the Kung Fu Genius podcast, we talk about Wing Chun, Bruce Lee, Yip Man, Hong Kong stuff, old stories, but also kung fu films. And so it's kind of nice to kind of go into these different compartments a little more thoroughly than we normally do in one episode here. So
I have something, but you go on yours.
The thing about weapons, so obviously I think flashy weapons tend to attract a lot of viewers, like people like, let's just look at Chinese kung fu weapons. People like the spinny, crazy stuff like chain whips and things like that. Yeah. But I've always been a fan of like Chinese sword stuff. Yeah, I think like broadsword or straight sword. I think they look really, really cool on film. Like even if you look at films like The Duel or even Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like just straight sword, like that, like those kind of mohap or wuxia movies, I think are really interesting to watch. Also, broadsword, I think, is really a badass weapon when you have someone who's really good with single broadsword or double broadsword. So I've talked about it before. Some of my favorite weapons film. Well, it's got to be a toss-up between Legendary Weapons of China, which is a Lau Ka Leung film, where they have the final fight scene. They fight with all 18 legendary weapons. It's Lau Ka Leung versus his brother Lau Ka Wing, and it's incredible. It's just a kung fu porn with culminating to this end scene where they can just go through all the weapons, right? Okay. It's really great, and it has my friend Xiu Hao in it.
Xiu Hao. Shout out to Xiu Hao.
And Gordon Liu makes a cameo in it. He's not like a main guy in it, but it's also considered by many to be one of the best, Lau Ka Leung's best, and back in the day, Rick Myers even considered it actually one of the best kung fu films ever because of the story, and the topic is very specific to the themes within kung fu, right? Rick Myers in his old book, From Bruce Lee to the Ninjas Martial Art Movies, which is a book that I read when I was a kid. It's part of the reason why I really got into this stuff. So it's also funny that Rick Myers is a friend of mine now, and I get to see the guy who wrote the book that kind of is part of the reason why I do what I do, especially on the kung fu movie stuff. And I remember as a kid, the book was a very thick book. That was the first like big book I read as a child.
Wow.
Because
How
I was
old
just,
were you?
I must have been 8 to 9 years old, right?
Your 8-year-old brain.
Just reading about samurai movies and stuff because I couldn't see them because it's in the 80s. It's before you have DVD and the internet, and I've lived in Central Jersey, so I couldn't just go, there was no Chinatown I could go to. Damn. I had to wait until Saturday to watch those kung fu movies, right? So I could see some of them, but there were many movies in there that I didn't have access to. So the only way I knew about movies like Legendary Weapons of China or 36 Chambers, AK Master Killer, was from Rick Myers' book. And I remember as a kid reading that book, and Rick Myers listed it as like the greatest kung fu movie of all time. And one of the reasons he said that, and I remember reading this as a kid and it always stuck with me, is that he said it was one of the few, or maybe he said the only kung fu movie where you couldn't change the theme of kung fu for another genre and it would still work. Like, for example, you could take other kung fu films and take the story and plop it into a Western, and it would work just the same. Or you could take another kung fu movie and plop it into a modern day like take the story and just put it into a modern day action movie, and the story would still work, right? because Legendary Weapons of China is about Kung Fu itself. And it's about this butting heads with modernity when you have weapons, when you now have guns, what is the value of fist fight? All right. And that is a uniquely Chinese Kung Fu topic because of the Boxer Rebellion, and actually talks about the Yiwo Tun, which is the group that went into the Boxer Rebellion. They were these cultists who thought that they were impervious to bullets, so they would train this type of qigong, and they thought that they could actually stop Western bullets. And spoiler alert, they could not.
Yeah.
So it actually talks about that, and it talks about fraudsters in Chinese martial arts who claim to have supernatural abilities that don't, and so that's like a huge theme in the movie. So Legendary Weapons of China is good for that reason, but it also has some of the best weapons fighting in there, and you can see all the weapons. It's a pure weapons porn. But the other film, which oddly enough also stars one of the guys from 18 Weapons of China, Lau Ka Wing, the brother of Lau Ka Leung, and Sammo Hung, is a film called The Odd Couple.
Okay.
And The Odd Couple, which I've talked about before, the entire film is a broadsword versus spear. And it's incredible. It's a very underrated film because I think it wasn't even done with by Golden Harvest. It was done by Sammo's young, I think his Gabo film production company when he started to produce his own films. So I don't think it had the distribution of like some of his other Golden Harvest stuff, but it's so great. And spoiler alert, so basically a spear master and a broadsword master every few years. They go to a mountaintop and they have a fight to see which one is better. So considering that the spear and the broadsword are the kings of Chinese Kung Fu weapons, right? And I think it's like every 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it. They basically meet at this like hilltop and they have a challenge fight, which goes for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
And then once the gong is been hit, then the match is over, right? And every time they meet, they always match to a draw. So they can never. So they're kind of like friends, but kind of frenemies. Like they want to show who's better, but they always kind of draw each other, right?
Okay.
And spoilers, they're getting older. All right, so it's basically an aged up Sammo Hung and an aged up Lau Ka Leung, with the white hair and the white eyebrows and everything. And they're getting older and they're like, we can't keep doing this. So then they get this idea that they're going to train students and the students are then going to fight each other and then they can settle the beef between, the historical beef between broadsword and spear, right? So to see which one is the king of Chinese weapons, right? So, and the interesting thing is, like I said, you have an aged up Sammo Hung and an aged up Lau Ka Wing. And then they play younger versions of themselves. And so the aged up Sammo Hung teaches a character played by Lau Ka Wing who's not aged up. And then Lau Ka Wing, the aged up Lau Ka Wing trains a character played by Sammo Hung who's not aged up. And then they fight each other, which means that both actors had to be able to fight with both weapons.
Wow.
Right?
So
it's
dope.
Now there's a little.
I've never seen this movie. I gotta see it.
It's like when you look at the choreography and this is like peak Sammo and
Couple.
peak The Odd Couple. Yes, they don't get the one with Tony Randall.
No.
Yeah, that's the wrong. Not that Odd Couple, Mom.
Okay.
It's
funny.
amazing because
That
they
happened
both
to
have
you.
to use both of those weapons to that high level of competency, and you're looking at, in my opinion, in terms of like classical kung fu, because in the 80s. They would stop making those classic kung fu movies and they would start making modern action movies. So when you look at Sammo Hung in the 80s, you have films like Eastern Condors and Millionaire's Express. These are like more modern set piece action movies. So when you look at films like The Odd Couple, that's, in my opinion, Sammo Hung in his peak form during that classic kung fu phase before they would go into modern action movies. So you're really looking, in my opinion, like the best form of him doing traditional Chinese kung fu. And it's incredible. Now, it's also a Chinese film from the 70s, so there's some Chinese humor in it, which if you are not familiar with it, sometimes Chinese humor can come off a little goofy or a little kind of simple to Westerners when you look at it. And so there's some spots there, especially with Deane Sek's character, where he's like a little he's being a little stupid, and you just kind of have to suffer through some kind of silly scenes. But other than that, it's pretty awesome.
You know,
The Odd Couple and 18 Legendary Weapons of China are my two favorite weapon films.
Well, you mentioned Master Killer, 36 Chambers.
Mm-hmm.
That movie where he stumbles upon, like he's in the bamboo woods or whatever, and he stumbles upon like breaking some bamboo, and then he comes with that weapon.
Yes.
What is that weapon called?
The three-sectional staff.
Three-sectional staff.
Yes.
Yeah. Sick.
That's a great.
Sick.
That is an awesome movie. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love 36 Chambers? It's most of Wu-Tang's quotes right there.
Yeah.
36 Chambers is such a great film for the story, for the action, and obviously the team of Lau Ka Leung and Lau Ka Fai, Gordon Liu, really, really incredible, and like the innovation in it. Of course, in America, when they release those films, especially when World Northall here in New York, here on Broadway, just a few blocks away, release those films for showing them on Saturdays, right, for Black Belt Theater or whatever, to kind of satisfy the kind of grindhouse era of people, they always had to change the titles to like Killer or Death. So because the Chinese title is literally 少林30樓房, which is like Shaolin 36 rooms. All right. So or 36 Chambers of Shaolin is kind of a much more accurate title, and it's the original English title of that film. But in the 80s, they're not going to release a movie called The 36th Chamber of Shaolin. They called it Master Killer, right? Because they always like to put death or master or killer or whatever in the title. So a lot of those Shaw titles had like very aggressive English titles here in the 80s releases of those films, which were actually different from the original English titles that Shaw gave them when they came out. Nowadays, because of DVDs and collectors and all sorts of stuff, we actually refer to films by their correct names now. But in the 80s, they had these kind of like Master Killer, right?
Gotta get that movie, yo.
Yeah.
What's the rooms about?
That's right. And Gordon Liu's...
He barely killed anyone. I don't get it.
Yeah, but he beat some ass. He killed some ass at the end there, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is that he wanted to create his own chamber, and then there was that one monk played by Wing Chun practitioner in real life, Lei Hoi Sang.
Okay.
Lei Hoi Sang was a student of Chiu. So in real life, he was a Wing Chun Sifu, right? And he fights him with the butterfly swords.
Yes.
And he's always matching him. Doesn't matter what weapon Gordon Liu comes back with, he's getting beaten. Yeah. And then he's out in the forest, and then he creates the idea for the Samjikwan, the three-sectional staff, right? And then uses it. And then I also think that was kind of Gordon, Lau Ka Leung's way of doing something a little bit different from the nunchucks that Bruce Lee did, like doing, we'll put one more section on it, right? Now, of course, that weapon existed in Chinese Kung Fu, but I think the gimmick of it was also to do something a little bit different than, what Bruce Lee had done.
It's funny you bring that up, because last night, Ong Bak 2, he had a similar weapon, but more like nunchucky, the longer chain. Nunchucky, with the three-sectional staff with two chains in the middle, and he was ass.
Right. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah,
whipping
so
ninjas' ass.
That's the only thing you do with ninjas.
Yeah.
You whip that
they
ass.
couldn't handle that three chain sectional bastards.
That's what's up. So, we talked about weapons. We talked about Kung Fu. We had a really good episode today.
We did.
And that's all I got to say about that. Okay, everyone. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of The Kung Fu Genius. As always, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to The Kung Fu Genius, and write in the comments below any questions you have that you want me to answer on a future episode. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.
Word is I'm a kung fu genius. Technique speaks for me, not lineage. Forget Jet Li, cause I'm the one. Many call me Sifu, but to you I'm Si-Kung. And I produce masters. You surpassed us. Your kung fu stiffer than corpse and caskets. City Wing Chun is the house I built. Violate the gate and your blood gets spilt. Alex Richter, always the victor.
Fucking pigeons in the background.
Yo, I heard him like, what the fuck is Mikey Deane doing?
Yeah,
What is he watching?
seriously.
Porno? He was like,
Well, that was your takeaway? I thought it was pretty... it's weird. It was pretty obviously pigeons. I don't know why his brain went there.
Yeah, he's still trying to get his head around.
That's it.
You don't have to get your head around. You just have to sit there.
Jesus. Dre learned a new word today. Lots of gems. Lots of... Andrew, you might maybe don't put this in there. We might get demonetized if the word is in this episode.
You could just, you know.
Oh, you know what? Bleep every.
Yeah.
And then, but even put something over my mouth so people can't lip read. Oh. And then we just won't let the audience know that Dre just learned what means. All right.
All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius, the genius will be answering all sorts of hot... What? You don't like that? You don't like that one? You don't...
No, we were just taking bets with our eyes. As to
Yeah,
what
we're
you-
taking bets with our eyes.
Any second time round?
It's going to take him at least 3
Feel like-
tries. All right, let's
I
go.
feel like I'm at
come on,
Enter
let's
the
go.
Dragon
Yeah.
fight.
Yeah.
About to fight. You guys making bets up there in the stands.
No, you're more like Williams about to
Roper.
fight Han.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Your ass going to be dead
Yeah.
in a few minutes.
Lots of gems. Lots of using Biu Tze on your seniors. Lots of... Almost had it, man!
You know what's worse is that's your quote.
I know. That's the part he messed up. His part.
His part.
You had one job.
All right, peeps. Why? All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius. All right, peeps. On today's episode of the Kung Fu Genius,
Well played, sir. Well played.
Hercules. All right.